video. Hello students, today we're working on still life compositions. So we have our still life already set up. We're working on the symmetry of form, especially objects that are literally called still life. You want to make sure that whatever measurement you have on the left is the same measurement you have on the right. You can measure your equal distances with your pen and really create your curves based on a pretty precise measurement. For curves that curve in and also when they curve out, you base your curves on where that line of symmetry is to really create the curve of a vessel that's very curvy. This one is very curvy and it sits on a podium like it's a clay type of pottery, and they put it together so it fits, and it's got a little perspective to it, so we got to pay attention to the perspective. If you notice, my lines are very sketchy to communicate what this still life is doing. There's a bubble here. Again, same on the left, same on the right. There's a bubble here. Then there's the base structure. Now, in the bowl, what we have in the bowl are fruits. So because our fruits are sitting in the bowl, the edge of the bowl overlaps the base of the fruit. So my apple is sticking up here. It's a little round. The pear is like sticking out from inside of it and it overlaps the back. But a pear is very funny. This too can have a line of symmetry with that oval shape and the top of the pear being a little bit off because it's really organic. But the apple surely overlaps the shape of the pear because the apple is in front of the pear. You can see a part of another apple back here, but not a lot. It's kind of facing the other way. It's a part of an apple. You don't really need all these sketchy lines, but it just helps you to find the center of what you're working on. There are two other bottles. This is in the foreground, so this is placed in the first 1/3 of the paper. Whatever's in the middle ground is going to be based in the second 1/3 of the paper, and whatever in the background is in the top. So I have a vase here that's in the middle ground. So we're going to set the base of this vase here. It is behind this setup here with the fruit and the stand. So we're going to have our line of symmetry going all the way up just about to the height of the subject. Again, we work on the shoulder area. We want the same on the left to be the same on the right. So we're going to connect this. This vase curves in right here, so we want the same distance on the right, same distance on the left. So once we have our curve, then swoosh all the way down. You can literally measure here and here and here so you have the same degrees of curve. So we see that this one needs to be here. Okay? So there are lots of different ways to measure so that your angles look and feel the same. We're seeing a little bit of the lid. So in elliptical perspective, we're going to have a very slight oval. So this oval should be similar to this oval right here. Doesn't have to be the same. We're talking about being similar. So here we have our nicely decorated Chinese vase in proper perspective with the right shape. We also have a very tall wine bottle that's right about here. It's also behind, just overlapped right here. So we're going to have our line of symmetry all the way up the base. Going to measure the same distance on the left, same distance on the right. That looks a little different. This needs to be a little wider there. Same distance on the right, all the way up here. Same on the left. So what we're getting is sort of like a cylinder. But then we also have a curve coming in here. So we're going to get the neck of the bottle, left side, right side. We have a curve right here. So we can guesstimate left side, right side, and make that curve all the way to the top. And because this is up, this is a lot taller than this one. The wine bottle is a lot taller than the vase. I'm not seeing that ellipse right here that I'm seeing on the bottle. So what I'm looking at right here, it's right about at my eye level. So I'm not really seeing an opening. I'm just seeing the area where that wine bottle would actually have that top or that lid put on. So we have this in proper perspective. In order for items to be grounded, we need to put our basic horizon line. So we know that this is where the countertop ends here and the wall begins here. If you want to increase your perspective, it's always nice to have diagonal lines. Let's say your vanishing point would be here. Your diagonal lines could branch out. So you can definitely feel the illusion of space every time you add diagonal lines. So that looks like a very interesting countertop. Now, looking at your materials to render, we have Yarka watercolors. These are my favorite brand. However, I am going to try a new brand only because these weren't available. This is called Angora. It's made in Germany. So we're going to try these two. I'll demonstrate this. These are Lyra water-soluble graphite. Water-soluble graphite really helps you to create a lot of values, from light values to dark values, and they tend to operate like watercolors. So I'll be demonstrating the water-soluble graphite. Now, for water-soluble graphite, you have different intensities. Right now, this container has 2B, 6B, and 9B. I've gotten ones where you also have 4B also included. Color pencils, Prismacolor. This is a really good student grade Prismacolor. So we're going to do one of our items also in Prismacolor. So different objects are going to be rendered with different types of media. From here, we're going to go ahead and erase our guidelines. You don't want to see lines on anything. Once you've rendered your still life, you don't want to see lines anywhere. So I'm going to begin with the graphite, because the graphite has a lot of gray. So I'm going to go ahead and look at where we have shadows And we're going to pencil in some of those areas where the shadows are kind of intense. The way graphite operates is you have a little bit of water, just a little bit of water. We'll move that graphite right off the page and blend it into different values. Water-soluble graphite helps you to create some beautiful values that you can really control as you progress. You can see that this 6B here comes in, it's a lot darker. You can blend softly so as not to have any texture in there, or you can really get in here with a 9B. And if you notice, I'm putting this really dark value on the inside where you have a cast shadow here. So we're going to go ahead and build a larger brush. A larger brush moves that graphite a lot quicker than a smaller brush. So this feels a lot like watercolors, but you do want to leave those nice white light highlighted areas in there. And just move that graphite around. So you can still experience the shape of the subject, which is in this case a really nice vase. I want to get a little more shadow right here underneath. And on the inside, here, there's a little bit of a shadow activity coming from the inside out. Inside out. So we're going to try to get a feel for that inside out. So there we have, very quickly, a nice vase, many different values, showing the light reflection in water-soluble graphite. For our fruit stand, I'm going to remove the line of symmetry and some of these wispy lines, because this object is actually yellow. So we really want a nice clean value. And I'll do this in watercolor. So here again, for my large areas, you want to do an underpainting. An underpainting says you lay your color down, you lay your water down, and you add your color on top. So that color, that basic underpainting color, is moved very quickly across the space that you're working in. This is what we call positive space This is the form that you're working on, positive space. I'm going to go ahead, and if you notice, I'm using my brush here to do exactly what this object is doing. If it's turning, I'm turning. If it's rounded, I'm moving around. Whatever shape it is, I'm moving that brush to do the brush stroke that is required for the shape. So this is my underpainting of the fruit vase. I'm gonna let that dry. I'm gonna work on my bottle. I wanna work on my bottle in colored pencil. I am showing you different types of media because you have different things at home to work with. Prismacolor is very interesting because Prismacolor blends really well from one color to the next to the next. So I'm gonna just pull out all my blues right here. Because my wine bottle is a very deep blue. Okay. So when you look at these colors, blue indigo, blue porcelain, blue Copenhagen, blue pale, and I can't read that, that's a light blue. So we're gonna start here with our values. At the base of the bottle, the values are very dark. So we get in here with our indigo. And again, if you notice, the bottle is very tall. So the movement with my hand goes up and down to follow the form, the structure of this bottle. Now the dark values, we're moving in and out of dark and light and medium values. So I'm going to go ahead in and go right through this with the other blue that's not so much indigo. So what I'm also doing is, you can see I'm leaving out a lot of these reflective areas where the highlights are in. Wherever white light hits the glass, no matter what color glass it is, you distinctly see a lighter value in that area. So we're going to leave that, but we are going to insert this lighter value so that you're experiencing the same highlight. And there's a strong highlight right here that goes to the very bottom of this bottle. And we always need to highlight by blending in very strong white values. If you notice, you can literally experience this as you layer it in on top of other colors. So you can definitely see the distinctive areas where that reflection is following through. But the base of the bottle is really, really dark. And because there's a rounded base, like that's the way they made the bottle, so we need to have our values, our dark values, coming up out of there and blending in very nicely with the shape of the bottle. So we continue blending. Our values. If you notice, I have several different types of blues working in that space, and I'm constantly blending back and forth, so that this bottle should look like you can take it off the page and pour something in it or pour something out of it. Now when you do your curved areas, again, the movement has to reflect the shape of the subject. So I'm going to continue layering in. Layering in our values. So that this bottle looks very real. Like you can lift it off the page. I think I'm going to need a sharpener in a minute. Let's blend this in here. Leave our white light areas for where the white light hits the bottle. Sometimes pressing gives you a nice added value. You can press on there, you get a nice dark value. It works well with Prismacolor, but not every brand is really good at this. This is the student grade Prismacolor. The artist grade Prismacolor is an investment. It's worth it, but it's quite an investment. I'm going to go in and add some more of our highlighted areas.
At the same time, we're starting our 5th period. Teachers, we're starting our 5th period. Student, you are to remain at your current location. Student, you are to remain at your current location.
Let's go ahead and enter in our white light here. If you notice, the white light blends those other colors, so we get some intensity of white values. Go in and put a little bit of a light blue there. This part also is very reflective. So you have to reflect the absolute shape of the subject, keeping in line those highlighted areas that you need to keep highlighted. This lid right here is a little stubborn. Because it's showing a really strong difference right here in that groove and right there. If you notice, whenever you're finishing with intense dark values, it adds another dimension to the subject. It makes you feel like you just want to take it right off the page. And again, we leave that reflective area in the middle. Open for work. Let's give that a little level right there, because it's kind of almost there. There you have it. All right, now I'm going to continue with this underpainting here. But since I want to see how these colors work, they're called Angora, and they're opaque colors. So I'm going to take a brush that's obviously very thin for details. It's a thin round brush. I'm going to get my yellow here, and I'm going to work in some grooves to that yellow right here. So now you see it's like a darker value. I'm almost writing with this. So we're going to use that light blue, that light yellow and that golden yellow here to work in details of the podium, but leaving our highlighted areas as well. Sometimes you will blend your yellow and gold, but you leave those highlighted areas so that it looks really, really interesting. Again, all of your work, you want to create interest with value. You really want to create a little excitement with value whenever you're working. On this front panel though, it's very a light yellow because the shadow is off to the side. So we're going to go ahead and get some intensity there in that nice round yellow, but leaving a little bit of highlight because it's a kind of glazed clay. You know, when clay is glazed, it looks very shiny. Get this dark value around here and bring it on in. For this area where we have curves right here, we're going to go in and use a light yellow for those curves. And you want these highlighted areas to just be very happy and free right here. Just let it happen the way it exists, you know? But under the undercarriage here, we're going to really get in here with some dark values and pull this down to meet your lighter values. So we can distinctly see our highlights and shadows. Moving very nicely in and out of a light color to a dark color to a medium color. Now this object is not extremely symmetrical. Like I said before, it's kind of like a handmade object. So it's moving and turning differently in certain areas. So again, we pull that color down to meet the lighter value, the brighter yellow. But you do want to leave your highlighted areas because it's a very reflective object. And right at the very top area, very delicate because there's a lot of light here shining right on top from the lights of the ceiling where I'm sitting in the art room. So there, now we have a little bit of excitement here. Again, we're going to introduce this dark value right here on the inside because that's the inner part of the fruit stand. Sometimes we can add even darker values there too, but for now we're going to let that sit for a while. And I don't see a big difference between Yarka and Angora. It just depends on your preference for now, and I've only used yellows because every color behaves differently. But yellow is a very delicate, stubborn color that works well in different brands and not always in other brands. Now, crayons are often overlooked because we remember crayons from junior school, whether it's prep school, elementary, junior high. But crayons can do a lot of fun things in a work of art. So I'm going to take this apple right here, and I'm going to, well, let's start with this little one in the back. Let's make that a green apple. Now, if you're talking about a green apple, there are many different values on a green apple. So I'm just going to take basic crayons. The lighter value, the medium values, and I'm going to use this interesting blue-green for some shadows. So let's go ahead and put the white light in where it's supposed to go. Wherever the light hits the subject, that's where you have that white light. I'm going to blend in this very light yellow. And some of that yellow is going to stay. I'm going to blend in that light yellow. The base color of a green apple is very often a light green. And if you notice, I'm pushing this into the white and the yellow. So we're getting that nice blend going back and forth. So there isn't a line in between these values. They're working together. They are working together. Can you see these colors blending? They're working together. So let's get all the way around to the other side where you can actually see that it's overlapped by the subject, by the apple in the front. Now we're going to go in for a slightly darker green, just to show that there's a shadow here. But we want to blend this out still. So we get that blend going. And you can touch that with a little bit of a dark green to build a blue green to build a little volume to that apple. We're going to go back over here and get to this part and to the part where that has a little bit of a stem thing going on. And we're going to pull that green out. It's very delicate to notice what it's doing, but we're going to pull that green out. So you know that a stem belongs right there. But we want that white light area to stay there. And I've actually broken crayons, guys, putting in white light, because you just want it to be so obviously present. You can take a dry brush and remove that heavy crayon wax matter that interferes with the texture of your subject. Sometimes if you have a fingernail, you gotta use that too. Awesome. So there goes my green apple. Sometimes if you want any kind of a stem, there's no room for a stem there. Let's do the stem on the other one. So we're gonna go to the red apple. That would be the foreground. So the red apple, I'm gonna pick a lot of different colors, because a red apple tends to have some green and some yellow and some white and some red. So we're gonna start with the red base for the red apple. We're gonna move left to right with that. And again, remember, we're working the subject according to its proper shape. So we're gonna go in for that movement that's kind of rounded. Bringing that color up, pushing it up into the shape that it belongs to. We're gonna put in our white light again, right around the shoulder of this apple. I call this the shoulder, because it kind of rounds out like a shoulder. I put a lot of like a highlighted value here. That just makes it rosy. This is like a pink. Just makes it very rosy. And that pink can come right on into the red also. Gives it a little volume and adds interest. So we're working these together, literally. Sometimes there's a little bit of a yellow right here on an apple. And if you notice, I've just blended like several colors together. Yellow, orange, red, orange, pink, white, and then we're going to come back to the red. So we see here, that's that sun-kissed part of the apple. Sometimes there's a little bit of green in here. Okay. A little bit of yellow coming out of here. Let's put that yellow orange to it. Come right on down to that pink. So it's a pretty good standard for that red to come right on in there and blend. Always leave white spaces for your white light. Always leave white spaces for your white light to have room to operate. Now this one we're going to put a stem right there, just a short one. But with your stem, don't do too much. Don't do too much, because sometimes you do too much and then you have a big block for a stem. Right now what we're doing is hinting at what a stem really is and how it should look on the subject. Okay, there we have our second apple. Now a pear, the pear is interesting because what we're looking for is a golden pear. Now pears are very interesting because they do a lot of different things. Sometimes you have them kind of like a greenish, yellowish, golden color. Sometimes the Bosch pears are very golden. So I'm gonna try a golden pear. So let's start with our highlights first. Put your highlights in first, white light first. And the reason for that is once you go too dark, you can't fix it with putting a lighter value on there. So let's put that light golden color, yellow color in there. And the highlight, of course, in there. We're going to go ahead with this golden color. That would more like be the color of the Bosch pear. But remember, you have to blend according to the shape of the subject. And this medium that I'm using here is Pentel Oil Pastels. It's a really good student grade product, but I've created really nice work with Pentel Oil Pastels. Most of my students enjoy getting a new pack. It's like the new pack of anything that you get. You just really want to get into it and enjoy it. So if you notice, oil pastels tend to operate like oil paint. They blend just as smoothly. Strong, bold colors. We're going to use the darker gold value here. To really get the shape of that. Sweeping through. Keep that nice buttery base right there. Keep that volume going. Keep that white light pressed in all the way through. If you notice, I'm going back and forth and blending, back and forth and blending. I'm going to put a little bit of a shadow right here because that apple is really creating a shadow on the pear. But I want to still blend this out so it maintains the shape of that pear. Now, if you notice, my watercolor has even kind of blended out, kind of gotten absorbed into the paper. So I'm gonna go back into it, but this time, I think I wanna add a touch of green. A touch of green for a dark value. I just wanna investigate this yellow blended with this gold. Never blend in your palette. Put your color off to the side. But I think I want a touch of brown over here. And then I want a touch of blue-green over here. So I want to put these two together. See if I can get a little bit of excitement out of this bowl. I just really want a little bit more out of it. I still think it's a little flat in areas. So I want a little bit of excitement out of it. In here, we're gonna add some dark values in here. It might reflect, might look more like a shadow than anything else. There. You don't really need much, especially with watercolors. You don't really need much to make a change and to make it very interesting. I'm gonna put a little bit in there. See if I can get some shadows out of that. I'm loving the way this gold works with the yellow. And I'm gonna spark that with a touch of green. Right there. Then I'm gonna go ahead and do something over here. Oh, that's a little too much for me. So I'm gonna just go ahead and lift that off. Right, that's what we're looking for. That's what we're looking for. Just a little bit of interest coming around here. There we have it. So we're gonna go ahead and put a little bit more on here also. Oh, where's my green? I didn't get any green. There's a little bit of green. It adds a little bit of interest to this fruit basket. A little bit of a strong yellow. Strong yellow. That's one thing about an underpainting. You can just continue playing and playing and playing until you think it has happened, you know? So you just keep touching with color, and again, you just let it happen. Yeah, although it is very simply yellow, I'm enjoying adding touches of this green to bring that kind of liveliness into the piece. And again, the one reason I'm teaching this as a multimedia piece is because depending on what you have at home, you have an idea of how many different ways you can work the subject with different types of media. You can do a multimedia piece, or you can just do all crayon or all watercolor, or however you feel best that this should work for you. Sometimes if you start in one medium, you can switch up and finish in another one, you know. In these times where you have downtime at home, these are really interesting things to practice. Just to see what happens, you know, as a result of you having an interest in trying something new. Yeah, I want this side to really have intense shadow. So I'm going to put a lot of green over here. I might even put a touch of brown. That kind of muddy brown for a strong shadow. Yeah. I'm sure you can see it coming along now. So when we first begin, it's an underpainting. As we make progress, you see areas that you really want to get back to. What I don't like to do is what I just did there. I lost a little bit of my white light. So let's create some drama with brown. It will call it back forward, you know. It'll call it forward. There. Let's put a little definition right there to close the gap right there in the back of the painting. Come around to that nice light value. There. You have a really nice podium. That's not a podium, that's a fruit bowl. Now, we're gonna try Faber-Castell watercolor crayons. These are 15 of them. Now, these are really interesting because they blend like watercolors, but they're crayons. So we're going to go ahead and play with these in the foreground and the background. So let's get started. Let's say that this is a countertop. It's a countertop. I'm going to put this line in here, blend it a little bit, bring it to this golden color. We don't want extreme texture because this is supposed to be wood grain. So I'm going to turn this crayon on the side, blend it, but I always want to leave white space. If this is wood grain, let's take our brush and now blend this water-soluble crayon. It has a different texture from watercolor, and it behaves differently. You can see it still leaves some texture there. So it's not as smooth as watercolors, but it's a very interesting product to work with. So if you come across these anywhere, you can distinctly remember how they operate and how to use them. And so again, wherever you're working, you want to follow the shape of that space that you're working in. So this is moving in a diagonal way, so we'll bring that down in a diagonal way. Okay? Because floorboards are very distinctive and there's usually a line in between, we'll go ahead and enjoy this nice contrast between the gold and the brown as we're working the space. Now, if you blend it smoothly and then go over with watercolor, you still have less texture, but that's up to you. How much texture you want in there. We want these two to kind of come together so it's a little bit seamless. Because you know when white hits the floorboards, it looks very, very light. This is an easy one. Even after you've done it, you can add even more value to it with the crayon. So really what I'm doing is just enjoying the media right now. I'm just enjoying these crayons and what they're able to do. But you can see it's keeping my perspective and really bringing my floorboards forward. Or if this was a tabletop or a countertop. One thing these crayons do is that it covers a large space faster. If you notice the speed with which I'm working, it's covering this space faster. Anything that's water soluble, the water does a lot of the work for you. Your water and your brush moves that pigment over the space and does a lot of the work for you. Now we're not done yet because we're going to go back and put in our shadows, our cast shadows. And of course the background space. Oh, we're not going to, well maybe I'll finish that, but not on screen. I think it will give you time to work in the areas that you want to work in also, instead of watching me do it. But you can come up with any kind of creative background you want for your still life. I do want this to blend a lot better than I just did it. So So let me get this shadow working. You notice you can wiggle that brush a little bit, move that pigment on the page. Small spaces. Please use the small brush so you keep it manageable. Small spaces. Use the small brush so you keep it manageable. Now, as I said, what you do want to do is to make sure that you create cast shadows. Where do you see shadows cast from your bottles and your vessels and things? So you can always press in with the same value. You can always press in with the same value. And you can always include even a darker value for just drama. In this case, when it comes to shadows, work with a small brush so that it remains manageable. You don't want your shadows running away from you, because once you put them there, you're stuck with them. So you really want your shadows to work well. In the course of what you're doing, you want your shadows to work well. So there we have some really good shadows. And there you have some really, really good shadows.